Welcome to TRS Clips, where you'll find happiness through your own curiosity. Now let's begin the story of Alexander the Great.
Yes, so Alexander the Great, Alexander the Greek, the Great, the Macedonian, whatever you want to call him, he was born in the 4th century BC. I think the year of his birth was 356 BC. And he was born in this country called Macedonia to the north of Greece. Today we think of Macedonia as Greece itself, but historically Macedonia was this little country, this little kingdom north of Greece. His father was a great conqueror. His name was Philip of Macedon. And Philip was this great expansionist, this conqueror who fought the Greeks and other neighboring kingdoms and who subjugated them all. So Philip is this guy, this great conqueror, this very masculine, manly figure who does everything a man would do, a great man would do. He conquers and subdues all the Greek kingdoms and states, city-states like Athens and Sparta and whatnot, and brings them all under his dominion. So that is the father. Now there's the mother figure. That's Olympias. So Alexander's mother was the greater influence in his life. She was a very strong-willed woman. She was the daughter of a king of a neighboring country, Greek country called Epirus. And her brother, when Alexander was a teenager, was the king of Epirus. So she was this imperious, strong-willed woman, very demanding, very pushy, and she did not get along well with her husband, King Philip. And these are the two dominant figures in the life of Alexander. So Alexander was this boy. He at a very young age, he was very precocious. He displayed a lot of qualities that looked like would mean that he would be a great king one day. And his parents appointed a tutor for him, Aristotle, very famous name, a philosopher. And Aristotle was also very influential in the formative years of Alexander's life. He taught him various subjects that he would typically teach a prince, like logic, like mathematics, like geography and all. And geography is what fascinated Alexander, because Aristotle used to speak about the Eastern nations. See, Greece is located in southeastern Europe, Mediterranean Sea, Aegean Sea. The Greece of that day included present-day Turkey. The present-day region of Anatolia, the region of Thrace, which is the small European portion of Turkey, and so on. The Baltic region also was kind of part of their world. So the Greeks understood Europe, they knew Europe reasonably well, but they knew next to nothing about Asia beyond Persia. So, like I said, historically, the present-day Turkey was Greece. But at that time, when Alexander was born and he was a young teenager, it was under Persian control. Our Persian neighbors, from our perspective, India, Persia is right now there's Pakistan between us, but historically Persia and India were neighbors. And Persia was this very powerful empire who was very militaristic and expansionist, and they always sought to expand westwards. They never fought India.
Okay, back to Alexander. And his parents. I believe he was sent away from his family until the age of 17 or 18.
Well, not really sent away. It's an interesting episode of his life.
Go for it. You take over.
So like I said, his parents did not get along together. Very strong-willed father and a very strong-willed imperious mother, Olympias, the daughter of the king of Epirus. And father is the king of Macedonia, who had subdued the whole of Greece. So mother and father don't get along. And Alexander was closer to his mother. He had this rivalry with his father. He saw his father as kind of as a competitor in manliness and in creating a legacy. So his parents didn't get along. His father marries another lady. His mother, in a fit of rage, obviously, naturally, leaves her husband's place and moves back to her home country, her native country, Epirus, where her brother is the king. And Alexander moves there with her. So he's separated from his father for a period of time. And his mother's brother, his uncle, obviously is very upset with Philip for marrying another lady and disrespecting his sister. So Philip, he sends diplomats and embassies to his brother-in-law, to the brother of Olympias, and he also offers, I think, his sister or his daughter, probably his sister, in marriage to this king. So everything is fine between the two kings, but Alexander is staying for a while with his mother. Now King Philip, he had subdued the whole of Greece, and he was beginning to plan for a massive conquest of Persia, of the Persian Empire, because Persia and Greece had history. Persia, like we discussed the movie 300, the Persians had invaded and occupied and conquered Greece during the reign of Emperor Xerxes. And he had, I think it was Xerxes or Darius, one of these two, who had burned Athens once. So there was this animosity, historical animosity. So Philip wanted to, it was not, his plans for conquest were not out of a need or a desire for revenge. It was out of a desire for self-glorification and for leaving a great legacy and proving how great he was. So he had begun to amass a great army drawn from all the different city-states and kingdoms within Greece. And after some time, he was reconciled with his son, Alexander. By the time Alexander was 17 or 18 years old, he already demonstrated signs of greatness. He was very fit, very athletic. He had great qualities as a leader and all. And in a battle or two, he was even given the command of one wing of Philip's army. And he acquitted himself so well that Philip felt insecure about what the qualities his son was demonstrating. Okay, so this is where we are. And Philip is planning to invade Persia. So he holds this great celebration or great feast or whatever, in which he invites all the various local rulers and all. And there's a military parade in which Philip is the centerpiece of the entire thing. And it is in this parade that Philip is assassinated. Somebody stabs him or spears him or something. And the assassin tries to escape, but one of Philip's soldiers kills the assassin. If he had not killed the assassin, then the motive would have been discovered. Why Philip was assassinated. So today historians speculate maybe it was Olympias, mother of Alexander, who had this done. Maybe it was Alexander himself who had his father assassinated, or maybe it was something else. We're not sure. It's all shrouded in mystery because the assassin was killed. So that's where we are. That's when Alexander is overnight, all of a sudden, with 1 hour's notice, thrust into the position of being the king of Macedonia. And then he has choices to make. As to what does he do now? Does he go ahead with Philip's plan to invade Persia? Or does he first try to consolidate his rule over Greece? Because now that Philip is dead, all these various principalities and states in Greece may feel that they no longer have the need to submit to the new king of Macedonia. So that's the choice Alexander had. And he decided to go ahead with the plans to invade Persia. But then he ran into problems with the kingdom of Thebes. So to the south of Macedonia, there was Epirus, southwest, and to the southeast, I believe, there was Thebes, which was one of the principalities in Greece. And Thebes resisted Alexander, that we're not gonna submit to you. So Alexander marches south, invades Thebes. There is this big siege of Thebes. The city had a wall. It was a fortified city, and this goes on for, weeks or months. And by the time the siege breaks, Alexander's soldiers are frustrated, and they have been hit a lot by the defenders of Thebes. So when the siege breaks, there is a lot of cruelty. It probably happened at night. Siege warfare is very cruel because we first of all starve out the city, and finally, when the siege breaks, you unleash all kinds of atrocities. So to make a long story short, Alexander displayed great sagacity as well as cruelty at Thebes. He tried to, let's say, give safe asylum to as many people as possible. Let's say in a family of 7 people, one of the people was in favor of Alexander and Thebes submitted to Alexander, then he would pardon the whole family. But apart from that, those who were not like that, he had them all sold into slavery. And then he had the entire city destroyed.
What was slavery at that point? Selling off to private owners?
Yes, selling off to private owners.
Anywhere in Europe?
Anywhere in Greece. Essentially to the elites, to the Greek society was very interesting. It had what you could call class or caste system. You had the nobility. It was, what we are taught is that Greece is the mother of democracy. Democracy begins with Greece. Greek democracy was such that only the aristocracy and only the male aristocracy could vote. And you had a significant portion of the population that was slaves who were owned by these aristocrats or nobles. And owned means they had the power of life and death and whatever else on these people. So that's what was done. All these men, women, children who were sold into slavery became the property of somebody else within Greece itself, not within Europe, within Greece, within Macedonia most likely. And they spent the rest of their lives in slavery. That's what happened.
Was Greece the focal point of power in Europe at that point?
The focal point of power in Europe probably was Greece, because Rome had not yet emerged as a great successor state. Eventually, Rome was the successor state or the next great power in Greece.
What would you say is the focal point of power in modern day Europe?
In modern day Europe, the focal point of power is Washington, D.C.
Within the geographical European landmass, Germany?
No.
No?
Germany is under US occupation. So is Italy.
France?
I would say France is the only quasi-independent nation in Western Europe. If you look at the whole of Europe, East and West, Russia is the power center.
Okay. What we look at now as the Western Bloc versus the rest of the world, that time was Greece and Macedonia, or Europe versus Persia.
Yes, and the Greeks were kind of aware of a country of a civilization called India, but they did not know much about it at the time.
What was happening in India at that time?
So at that time, we had the Nanda Empire in India, and the emperor was Mahapadmananda, a very cruel person, a very greedy and rapacious person who hoarded a lot of wealth in his palace or wherever it was. And it was allegedly under a river or whatever that he was holding his treasures. So at the time, we had a very powerful empire in India, which was not a very kind emperor. There was Mahapadmananda. Around this time.
Where was he based in India?
He was based out of Patliputra, present-day Patna.
Bihari.
Present-day Bihari. Magad. It was called Magad in those days.
And Magad has been the seat for power in India multiple kingdoms.
It has given India so many empires. It has been the birthplace of so many empires. It was the flower of Indian culture. The center of India for such a long time. Look where we are today.
So many narratives about Indian history also, but we'll stick to Alexander and Genghis Khan here. Specifically Alexander. So he goes and conquers that western part of Greece.
Thebes.
When does his eastern descent begin?
Right. So he conquers Thebes. He destroys the city. And that sends a very strong message to the rest of the kingdoms in Greece that this guy is not to be messed with. He is no less than his father. So then they all submit to him. Let's make it a long story short. Okay, there's a lot in there, but they all submit to him. Then he gathers this army together, about 50,000 men. Okay, from various parts of Greece, mainly Macedonia. And then they set out eastwards to carry out the father's plans, Philip's plans. So they go eastwards into the Balkan region, and they go east of that, and they cross over the sea, the Aegean Sea, I believe, and they land in Anatolia, Turkey, which was then under Persian control. And there are some battles, and he goes forward. But the thing is that, like I said, it was there under Persian control, but it was historically Greece, which means that peasantry, the population were mostly Greek, and they welcomed him being Greek. They were happy to see a Greek king come and take over the territory. So they were under Persian occupation, and once Alexander comes there, they see him as a liberator. So he does not face a lot of resistance in Anatolia. So he goes eastwards. But there is this thing. So he goes eastwards, and that's when the then king of Persia, Darius III, comes to know that this young boy from Greece, the son of Philip, is marching into Persian territory. So he says, this stupid boy, let me teach him a lesson. He gathers an army, Darius III. Reputedly, the army was 500,000 soldiers, or maybe 1 million soldiers. And this guy, Alexander, has 50,000 at most. And they meet somewhere in Syria, near the region of Damascus, somewhere around there. There's a massive battle. And at that time, Persia was already an ancient empire. Now, when you have formed a new empire, your soldiers and your administration is hard, and you know how to fight. But if you have like 7 or 8 generations of emperors before you, then you become a soft state, and you become more all about pomp and pageantry and displays of power and displays of wealth and all that. So he had this very large army that was very well decorated or whatever, let's say, but they were not good at fighting. So Alexander's soldiers were all hard men. The Greece was a poor nation at the time compared to the eastern empires of Persia and India. Greece and Europe were poor. They were in poverty, which means that they were very hardy people. They were hard people. So there's this battle, to make a long story short, and the Persian army is annihilated. It is annihilated.
Despite being a 1:10 ratio.
1:10 ratio, exactly. But the Persian army is routed, and Darius has to flee eastwards. So Alexander gets his first great victory over the Persians in the region of Syria. Then he has two options. Shall I pursue Darius eastwards and take over the rest of Persia, or shall I first deal with Egypt? Egypt is the south of Syria. So he says, let me go to Egypt. But there was one problem over there. There was an island in which there was this island kingdom called Tyre, Tyre, which is present day in Lebanon. So this was a powerful maritime kingdom, a very, very prosperous trading center, and they had a reasonably good army. So they were still independent. They had still not come under the dominion of the Greeks under Alexander. So Alexander decided to first take out Tyre. So he sent an embassy to Tyre and said that you need to submit to me, and they refused. So then what he does is that he builds his version of the Ramasetu, which was about, the island was about 100 meters or so, less than half a kilometer from the shore. But to build a bridge was very difficult. So he builds a bridge and it gets swept away in a storm. Then he rebuilds an even stronger bridge. Eventually, he does siege warfare against Tyre. And to make a long story short, eventually Tyre is subdued and he massacres whoever he can, and he crucifies tens of thousands of people. Crucifixion. Extreme cruelty. So Alexander over time becomes more and more cruel. That's what we see.
What is crucifixion?
Crucifixion is what the Romans did to Jesus later on. This wooden cross, and you nail people to that. You either tie people to that or nail the people to that cross, and you expose them to the elements, to the wind and the sun and the whatever else. And after some period of time, they die either by being eaten by vultures or crows, or because of exposure to the elements. Very, very, very cruel death. Very cruel death. So he crucified tens of thousands of people in the island of Tyre. So he subdues Tyre, wins the thing, gets a great amount of wealth from there. He also took a great amount of wealth from Damascus. Then he moves down south to Egypt. Egypt was then under Persian domination. So the Egyptians also saw Alexander as a liberator. So he essentially took Egypt without fighting too much. And then he installs a governor to rule Egypt in his name. His name was Ptolemy. Ptolemy the First. The Indians, they called him Ptolemaiah. So Ptolemy was installed as the governor of Egypt, and Alexander did one good thing in Egypt. He founded a new city of the sea, a coastal city. Today it is called by the Egyptians Al-Iskandriya. And in English it's called Alexandria. So that's one city, that's one thing that he founded that still exists. Nothing else exists. So he conquers Egypt essentially without firing a single shot. He takes it back he liberates it from the Persians, but puts it under his yoke, under his domination. Then he once again goes back in pursuit of Darius III. So he goes eastwards, he crosses Anatolia and goes eastwards, and now he's coming into Persia. He even goes northwards, he crosses the Akshu, what was it called? The river? The Akshu river, I think it was called. The Oxus. We Indians call it the Akshu or the Chakshu or something like that. And he pursues, to make a very long story short, he pursues Darius everywhere. Eventually, they meet in a big plain called Gaugamela. And this is the great battle of Gaugamela, in which the entire Persian army is annihilated. And once again, Darius escapes, but the flower of the Persian army is finished. And that plain, about 300,000 dead soldiers with elephants and horses were there on the plain. So you can imagine how it smelled after a day or two. So everybody, including the local population, had to flee from the place. That's how horrible it was, the scene. And then eventually what happens is that he's able to capture the family of Darius, who stupidly brought his own family to the scene of the battle. I think his family was captured in Syria itself. So his mother was captured, Darius's mother. His wife was captured, and a whole number of other ladies and other people. His child was also captured. So Alexander treats them well, Darius' family, because he wanted to demonstrate how powerful and important he was, that he had such important hostages with him. So the better he treated them and the more royal treatment he gave them, the more important they became as hostages. So he treats Darius' family very well. Darius flees, I think, north of the Oxus River, and eventually he is betrayed and murdered by his own people, by his own generals. And Alexander has that general who did this tortured and given a very bad death.
In the general who killed
Darius.
Alexander tortured and killed him.
Yes. He had that general handed over to the mother of Darius, who had him tortured and all. But in between all of this, before the death of Darius, Alexander takes the city of Persepolis, and he gets drunk, and it is all blamed on a woman, one of his companions, who was also drunk, and she got this great idea, let's burn the city. Because 150 years ago, the Persian king, Darius I, or whoever it was, had burned Athens. So let us burn the Persepolis. And Alexander says, yeah, let's do it. And they burned the city. Even today, if you go to Parsa, present-day Parsa, you can see burn marks on the walls. He destroys the flower of the Persian civilization, the great city of Persepolis, destroyed forever. It is still in ruins, the way he left it.
Coming back to the story.
So he conquers Persia. Okay, he burns Persepolis. Eventually, Darius dies. He's betrayed by his own general, and the general is tortured to death. And then Alexander takes all the wealth of Persia, so much wealth that he gets, and much of it is sent back to Greece. Much of that is sent back to his own mother as gifts. And his mother has this constant correspondence with Alexander. She keeps sending him, writing letters to him, criticizing his actions to some extent, and exhorting him to strive for more greatness and all that, and so on. So that's the Persian chapter of Alexander. But his desire for glory and conquest is not satisfied. He wants to now explore the unknown frontier. The Greeks had never explored India. So he says, let's conquer India. So that's how he crosses, he reaches all the way to the Indus, and over there and further east there is the river they call the Hydaspes, which is either the Sutlej or the Ravi. I don't remember which it is. The readers can certainly look it up. The Greeks called it the Hydaspes. So over there was a small border governor, border chieftain, like a district level sarpanch, whose name the Greeks called Porus. Okay, he had about 500 elephants. So he's a reasonably strong king, and the Greeks fight this guy. So they have destroyed everything in their path. They have conquered Egypt. They have conquered Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers Euphrates and Tigris. They have destroyed the Persian Empire. And now they are coming into India. They find this king with 500 elephants. They fight him. Apparently they defeat him. And Alexander is so impressed by the valor of this guy called Porus that he offers him the governorship of this region. But while coming to this region, he goes across Gandhar, where he finds a lot of opposition in the villages, and he has entire villages burnt alive and people burned alive. That is something nobody speaks about today. But look up the accounts of the Greek historians of that time. Not from Alexander's time, but 100 or so years after him. That's the first accounts we have of Alexander's history. Those first accounts. So in that, the cruelty is unvarnished. What he did, he had entire villages burned alive and people massacred and slaughtered and crucified and whatnot. Extreme cruelty. And then he finds the first opposition in this guy Porus, and apparently he defeats Porus. But then the defeat is so calamitous. I mean, the battle is so calamitous that his own horse, Bucephalus, dies in that. His beloved, cherished horse dies in this battle. And his soldiers are so exhausted and so frightened that we fought a small border chieftain of India, and this is what happened to us. We almost lost. And across the Indus River, there is the empire of Mahapadmananda, who's got 50,000 war elephants and who have weapons that we cannot even imagine. So we don't want to cross the river. So his soldiers mutiny and they force him to go back. So he goes back to Babylon, where he drinks a lot, and apparently after one drinking session, he falls sick, and from that he never recovers, and he dies. And as soon as Alexander dies, all his governors he had placed in various parts of the world, they fight each other. Because now the great king is gone and we can become kings in our own right. And that's how the Indo-Greek kingdom is formed, with all these little kings like Milind, Menander and all. But over a century and a half, they all become Indianized. They marry Indian wives and all. And today, lots of people from northern Western India will have a little bit, 1%, 2% Greek blood, but nobody will know about it. So the Greeks all assimilate into Indian society eventually. They become Indianized. So that is, to make a long story short, Alexander reaches all the way to the Sapta Sindhu region.
Pakistan.
Present day Pakistan, more or less. And that's where, so according to the great Russian Admiral Zhukov, the battle of the Hydaspes was a defeat for the Greeks. But their writers obviously will not put it that way. That's why they say that he actually won the battle. And then because of his soldiers, the pressure they exerted, he chose to go back to Babylon. And that's where he died. But whichever way you look at it, it was a disastrous campaign. He wanted to conquer India, but it did not happen. And his soldiers knew that you take one step across the river, you're inviting a foe who you cannot imagine. It is way more dangerous than the Persians, and we will not come back alive from that. So that's what happens. He goes back to Babylon. He dies there. His generals and governors all fight each other. There is the battle. There is the war of the Diadochi of the governors, and one man comes out on top, Seleucus Nicator. And he then comes back to the border of India, and he finds that the empire of Mahapadmananda is gone. And there's a new regime in India. The regime of Chandragupta Maurya and Vishnugupta Chanakya. And there is a small 1-year war between India and the Greeks of Seleucus Nicator. And then there is an agreement, a peace treaty between India and Greece. And the Greeks return the whole of Afghanistan, present-day Afghanistan, Gandhar, to India. And the peace treaty is sealed, is solemnized by the marriage of Emperor Chandragupta with the daughter of Seleucus. And as a dowry or as an exchange thing, whatever, the Indian emperor gives Seleucus Nicator 500 war elephants, with which he carves out a huge empire in Western Asia. And after Seleucus dies and after Chandragupta dies, their sons maintain the same relationship. So there was the first peace treaty between India and Greece. That's how old India-Greece relations are. And that's the story of Alexander in a very brief nutshell.
I wonder who the son of Chandragupta Maurya and his Greek wife was.
Yeah, we don't know. That part of history is kind of lost.
Okay. Chandragupta Maurya was also based out of modern-day Bihar.
Patliputra, present-day Patna.
Do you think there could have been white people all over Bihar at one point?
There was a Greek embassy in Patliputra during the time of Ashok. And yes, you had Greeks who had this kingdom in northwestern India, present-day Afghanistan, and some parts of Pakistan. The Indo-Greek kingdom. There were several kings there, and they had all become Indianized, which means they were all either Buddhists or Hindus, and they had pilgrimages all the way to Kashi, Varanasi, all the way to Sarnath, all the way to Patliputra. They even built temples and monasteries. The Greeks. Some of those are recorded. So yes, there was definite interaction and exchange of populations and whatnot.
I wonder what they brought to India.
What they brought to India was a little bit of Greek genetics. That's it. No other contribution apart from that. Yes, some of the art, the Gandhara art is strongly influenced by Greek art. So that is there. If you see the Gandhara Buddhist art, you can see Lord Buddha, Gautam Buddha, who looks more Western than Indian. I mean, Gautam Buddha has lots of depictions. In Japan, he looks Japanese. In China, he looks Chinese. In India, he looks the way he really was. And in Gandhara, he looks kind of Greek. Because it was the Greek artists who depicted him with Greek features. So Gandhara art, so that's one thing the Greeks brought to India. Apart from that, no long-lasting influence.
Hey, if you enjoyed today's clip, make sure you check out all the other clips we've uploaded on this channel. You'll find a clip related to almost every single topic as long as you're willing to search for it.